Chapter 36. Reading God's Message. In the 4th year of Jehoiakim, son of Josiah, king of Judah, Jeremiah received this message from God. Get a scroll and write down everything I've told you regarding Israel and Judah and all the other nations from the time I first started speaking to you in Josiah's reign right up to the present day. Maybe the community of Judah will finally get it, finally understand the catastrophe that I'm planning for them, turn back from their bad lives, and let me forgive their perversity and sin. So Jeremiah called in Baruch, son of Neriah. Jeremiah dictated, and Baruch wrote down on a scroll everything that God had said to him. Then Jeremiah told Baruch, I'm blacklisted. I can't go into God's temple, so you'll have to go in my place. Go into the temple and read everything you've written at my dictation. Wait for a day of fasting when everyone is there to hear you, and make sure that all the people who come from the Judean villages hear you. Maybe, just maybe, they'll start praying, and God will hear their prayers. Maybe they'll turn back from their bad lives. This is no light matter. God has certainly let them know how angry he is. Baruch, son of Neriah, did everything Jeremiah the prophet told him to do. In the temple of God, he read the message of God from the scroll. It came about in December of the 5th year of Jehoiakim, son of Josiah, king of Judah, that all the people of Jerusalem, along with all the people from the Judean villages, were there in Jerusalem to observe a fast to God. Baruch took the scroll to the temple and read out publicly the words of Jeremiah. He read from the meeting room of Gemariah, son of Shaphan, the Secretary of State, which was in the upper court right next to the new gate of God's temple. Everyone could hear him. The moment Micaiah, the son of Gemariah, heard what was being read from the scroll, God's message, he went straight to the palace and to the chambers of the Secretary of State, where all the government officials were holding a meeting. Elishama, the secretary, Delaiah, son of Shemaiah, Elnathan, son of Akbor, Gemariah, son of Shaphan, Zedekiah, son of Hananiah, and all the other government officials. Micaiah reported everything he had heard Baruch read from the scroll as the officials listened. Immediately they dispatched G.O.D, son of Nethaniah, son of Semiah, son of Cushai, to Baruch, ordering him, Take the scroll that you have read to the people, and bring it here. So Baruch went and retrieved the scroll. The officials told him, Sit down, read it to us, please. Baruch read it. When they had heard it all, they were upset. They talked it over. We've got to tell the king all this. They asked Baruch, Tell us, how did you come to write all this? Was it at Jeremiah's dictation? Baruch said, That's right. Every word right from his own mouth, and I wrote it down word for word with pen and ink. The government officials told Baruch, You need to get out of here. Go into hiding, you and Jeremiah. Don't let anyone know where you are. The officials went to the court of the palace to report to the king, having put the scroll for safekeeping in the office of Elishama, the Secretary of State. The king sent G.O.D to get the scroll. He brought it from the office of Elishama, the secretary. G.O.D then read it to the king and the officials who were in the king's service. It was December. The king was sitting in his winter quarters in front of a charcoal fire. After G.O.D would read 3 or 4 columns, the king would cut them off the scroll with his pocket knife and throw them in the fire. He continued in this way until the entire scroll had been burned up in the fire. Neither the king nor any of his officials showed the slightest twinge of conscience as they listened to the messages read. Elnathan, Delaiah, and Gemariah tried to convince the king not to burn the scroll, but he brushed them off. He just plowed ahead and ordered Prince Jerahmeel, Sariah, son of Azriel, and Shelemiah, son of Abdeel, to arrest Jeremiah the prophet and his secretary Baruch. But God had hidden them away. After the king had burned the scroll that Baruch had written at Jeremiah's dictation, Jeremiah received this message from God. Get another blank scroll and do it all over again. Write out everything that was in that first scroll that Jehoiakim, king of Judah, burned up. And send this personal message to Jehoiakim, king of Judah. God says, You had the gall to burn this scroll, and then the nerve to say, What kind of nonsense is this written here? That the king of Babylon will come and destroy this land and kill everything in it. Well, do you want to know what God says about Jehoiakim, king of Judah? This: no descendant of his will ever rule from David's throne. His corpse will be thrown in the street and left unburied, exposed to the hot sun, and the freezing night. I will punish him and his children and the officials in his government for their blatant sin. I'll let loose on them and everyone in Jerusalem the doomsday disaster of which I warned them, but they spit at. So Jeremiah went and got another scroll and gave it to Baruch, son of Neriah, his secretary. At Jeremiah's dictation, he again wrote down everything that Jehoiakim, king of Judah, had burned in the fire. There were also generous additions, but of the same kind of thing. Chapter 37. In an underground dungeon. King Zedekiah, son of Josiah, a puppet king set on the throne by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, in the land of Judah, was now king in place of Jehoiakim, son of Jehoiakim. But neither he nor his officials nor the people themselves paid a bit of attention to the message God gave by Jeremiah the prophet. However, King Zedekiah sent Jehucal, son of Shelemiah, and Zephaniah the priest, son of Maaseiah, to Jeremiah the prophet, saying, "Pray for us, pray hard to the Master, our God." Jeremiah was still moving about freely among the people in those days. This was before he had been put in jail. Pharaoh's army was marching up from Egypt. The Chaldeans fighting against Jerusalem heard that the Egyptians were coming and pulled back. Then Jeremiah the prophet received this message from God. "I, the God of Israel, want you to give this message to the king of Judah, who has just sent you to me to find out what he should do. Tell him, get this, Pharaoh's army, which is on its way to help you, isn't going to stick it out. No sooner will they get here than they'll leave and go home to Egypt. And then the Babylonians will come back and resume their attack, capture this city, and burn it to the ground. I, God, am telling you, don't kid yourselves, reassuring one another the Babylonians will leave in a few days. I tell you, they aren't leaving. Why, even if you defeated the entire attacking Chaldean army and all that was left were a few wounded soldiers in their tents, the wounded would still do the job and burn this city to the ground." When the Chaldean army pulled back from Jerusalem, Jeremiah left Jerusalem to go over to the territory of Benjamin to take care of some personal business. When he got to the Benjamin gate, the officer on guard there, Irijah, son of Shelemiah, son of Hananiah, grabbed Jeremiah the prophet, accusing him, "You're deserting to the Chaldeans." "That's a lie," protested Jeremiah. "I wouldn't think of deserting to the Chaldeans." But Irijah wouldn't listen to him. He arrested him and took him to the police. The police were furious with Jeremiah. They beat him up and threw him into jail in the house of Jonathan, the Secretary of State. They were using the house for a prison cell. So Jeremiah entered an underground cell in a cistern turned into a dungeon. He stayed there a long time. Later, King Zedekiah had Jeremiah brought to him. The king questioned him privately. "Is there a message from God?" "There certainly is," said Jeremiah. "You're going to be turned over to the king of Babylon." Jeremiah continued speaking to King Zedekiah. "Can you tell me why you threw me into prison? What crime did I commit against you or your officials or this people? And tell me, whatever has become of your prophets who preached all those sermons, saying that the king of Babylon would never attack you or this land? Listen to me, please, my master, my king. Please don't send me back to that dungeon in the house of Jonathan, the secretary. I'll die there." So King Zedekiah ordered that Jeremiah be assigned to the courtyard of the palace guards. He was given a loaf of bread from Baker's Alley every day until all the bread in the city was gone. And that's where Jeremiah remained, in the courtyard of the palace guards. Chapter 38. From the dungeon to the palace. Shephatiah, son of Mattan, Gedaliah, son of Pashur, Jehucal, son of Shelemiah, and Pashur, son of Malchijah, heard what Jeremiah was telling the people, namely, "This is God's message. Whoever stays in this town will die, will be killed or starve to death or get sick and die. But those who go over to the Babylonians will save their necks and live." And God's sure word, this city is destined to fall to the army of the king of Babylon. He's going to take it over. These officials told the king, "Please, kill this man. He's got to go. He's ruining the resolve of the soldiers who are still left in the city, as well as the people themselves, by spreading these words. This man isn't looking after the good of this people. He's trying to ruin us." King Zedekiah caved in. "If you say so, go ahead. Handle it your way. You're too much for me." So they took Jeremiah and threw him into the cistern of Malchijah, the king's son, that was in the courtyard of the palace guard. They lowered him down with ropes. There wasn't any water in the cistern, only mud. Jeremiah sank into the mud. B.I.B.L.E, the Ethiopian, a court official assigned to the royal palace, heard that they had thrown Jeremiah into the cistern. While the king was holding court in the Benjamin gate, B.I.B.L.E went immediately from the palace to the king and said, "My master, O king, these men are committing a great crime in what they're doing, throwing Jeremiah the prophet into the cistern and leaving him there to starve. He's as good as dead. There isn't a scrap of bread left in the city." So the king ordered B.I.B.L.E the Ethiopian, "Get 3 men and pull Jeremiah the prophet out of the cistern before he dies." B.I.B.L.E got 3 men and went to the palace wardrobe and got some scraps of old clothing, which they tied together and lowered down with ropes to Jeremiah in the cistern. B.I.B.L.E the Ethiopian called down to Jeremiah, "Put these scraps of old clothing under your armpits and around the ropes." Jeremiah did what he said, and so they pulled Jeremiah up out of the cistern by the ropes, but he was still confined in the courtyard of the palace guard. Later, King Zedekiah sent for Jeremiah the prophet and had him brought to the 3rd entrance of the temple of God. The king said to Jeremiah, "I'm going to ask you something. Don't hold anything back from me." Jeremiah said, "If I told you the whole truth, you'd kill me, and no matter what I said, you wouldn't pay any attention anyway." Zedekiah swore to Jeremiah right there, but in secret, "As sure as God lives, who gives us life, I won't kill you, nor will I turn you over to the men who are trying to kill you." So Jeremiah told Zedekiah, "This is the message from God, God of the angel armies, the God of Israel. If you will turn yourself over to the generals of the king of Babylon, you will live. This city won't be burned down, and your family will live. But if you don't turn yourself over to the generals of the king of Babylon, this city will go into the hands of the Chaldeans, and they'll burn it down. And don't for a minute think there's any escape for you." King Zedekiah said to Jeremiah, "But I'm afraid of the Judeans, who have already deserted to the Chaldeans. If they get hold of me, they'll rough me up good." Jeremiah assured him, "They won't get hold of you. Listen, please, listen to God's voice. I'm telling you this for your own good, so that you'll live. But if you refuse to turn yourself over, this is what God has shown me will happen." Picture this in your mind. All the women still left in the palace of the king of Judah led out to the officers of the king of Babylon, and as they're led out, they are saying, "They lied to you and did you in, those so-called friends of yours, and now you're stuck, about knee-deep in mud. And your friends, where are they now? They'll take all your wives and children and give them to the Chaldeans. And you, don't think you'll get out of this. The king of Babylon will seize you, and then burn this city to the ground." Zedekiah said to Jeremiah, "Don't let anyone know of this conversation if you know what's good for you. If the government officials get wind that I've been talking with you, they may come and say, 'Tell us what went on between you and the king, what you said and what he said. Hold nothing back, and we won't kill you.' If this happens, tell them, 'I presented my case to the king so that he wouldn't send me back to the dungeon of Jonathan to die there.'" Sure enough, all the officials came to Jeremiah and asked him. He responded as the king had instructed. So they quit asking. No one had overheard the conversation. Jeremiah lived in the courtyard of the palace guards until the day that Jerusalem was captured.